Hello, my name is Alejandro Leal Lopez, and this is my learning outcome number 3. The first event I'll cover is the fall of the Berlin Wall. It was built on August 12th through 13th of 1961 by East Germany. This wall separated East and West Germany from 1961 to 1989. The fall of the wall was a result of democratization and the final agreement of making Germany a unified nation once again. This wall separated the West, which was a more capitalism-focused economy, while the East had a more communist approach. So this wall basically separated both parts of the nation, which was East and West. Then we have the Persian Gulf War. It took place between 1990 and 1981. It all started with the invasion of Kuwait by Iraq and its leader Saddam Hussein. Iraq's plan was to take control of Kuwait's largest oil reserve in order to cancel a debt. After the UN ordered Iraq to retreat, they refused, resulting in the authorization to use force to get them out. The war began with bombings and finally resulting in the US regaining control of Kuwait's capital. There is an estimate of 180,000 to 630,000 Iraqis. They lost their lives, while only 300 allies did. The last event is the attack of the Twin Towers. On September 11, 2001, 19 hijackers took control of 4 commercial planes. 2 planes hit the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center, which was the symbol of America's power. Another plane hit the Pentagon, which was the headquarters of defense. There was a 4th plane, but reportedly the victims of the plane, like the passengers, took control of the plane and crashed it in Pennsylvania. It didn't hit anyone but the land. The total amount of deaths is not exact, but is estimated to be roughly 3,000 people, by far being the most deaths in US oil by terrorist attacks. Okay, so now I'm gonna explain some concepts. Okay, so the first concept is globalization. It is a process in which companies, trade, people, and governments of different countries act together in order to increase investment in their respective countries. It has huge effects mainly on economy, environment, and culture. Now more than ever, it is common to see groups in your own environment who start adopting customs from their country of origin. Then we have terrorism. Terrorism is the use of violence by certain groups. It is used to create fear in the population who they attack, and by doing this, trying to bring attention to certain political situations or objectives. It has been practiced by political organizations, religious and nationalistic, as well as revolutionary groups. Some examples of terrorist groups are ISIS, Boko Haram, and Kataib Hezbollah. These 3 have a great presence in the Middle East. The next concept is unipolar world. After the fall of the communist bloc, the world transitioned from a bipolar state to a unipolar one. The United States practically became the only remaining superpower. There was no country that was powerful enough to have a chance against their forces. Although the US does not have power over the world, it does have one of the strongest economies, and definitely the biggest military in the world. Lastly, we have the digital era. After the invention of the TV and the phone, the technological advances have been astonishing, as well with the continuous improvements of computers and the rise of the internet, making it part of our daily lives, from how we learn to how we communicate, and even how we learn. It is thanks to the internet that news or events can now spread faster and more effectively than ever. Now we're going to see the relationships between the events that we saw previously and the criteria like terrorism, globalization, digital era, and unipolar world. First, we have the fall of the Wall of Berlin. In terrorism, the acts of terrorism I can think of is mostly the killing of people who wanted to cross to the other side of the wall. In the globalization, after the fall, it meant in part the failed attempt of communism. It also made people united and take democracy as the way to go. The digital era, it was such a good news, shown in all major news outlets, even nowadays. I've seen pictures of remains of the wall trying to show the horrors it caused. In the unipolar world, it marked the end of the Cold War for America, meaning they are now the leaders, the superpower nation. And then there's the Persian Gulf War. In terrorism, although with the permission of the UN, I find it hard to believe that the bombings were not terrorist attacks. They had political objectives, meaning they can be classified as such. Globalization. It brought together many nations' military forces, such as Americas, French, British, and even Egyptians. Digital era. It was broadcasted on all major news outlets. At the time, it had to be through TV, mostly because internet was barely rising. Unipolar world. It was very clear to see the military advantages the US had. Just by looking at death figures, we know they had no competition or on equipment or training. Now the attack of Twin Towers. Terrorism. This was a definite terrorist attack, supposedly by Al Qaeda. They just wanted to attack the American people and make them feel scared in their own backyard. Globalization. It made traveling by airport have way more security checks. It also made countries in the Middle East hate America after their attacks on both Afghanistan and Iraq. Digital era. This was also broadcasted through news outlets around the globe, but many people through the internet started writing blogs of their experience. Okay, now we're going to see some questions. Why did the globalization emerge? Because of technological advancements, as well as capitalism, which pretty much was the economic model for most countries. Thanks to technology, communication was now very effective, and information sharing was also possible from any place in the globe. Another factor that contributed was the adoption of steel transport containers, which made it cheaper to transport things. In most cases, what caused the terrorist attacks of the 20th century? I believe that the leading cause was the political, religious, and social activists recurred to terrorism to show the world what they thought of certain social or political actions. How does the end of the Cold War relate with the unipolar world? It has everything to do with the making the world unipolar. Basically, the US and USSR were the top dogs for a long time, but after the Cold War and the disintegration of such meant that the US didn't have any real competitor in the economy nor military. How has the digital era influenced today's society? Everything revolves around technology. It's changed the way we live. For instance, you can work online by writing a blog. You can also study online, just like I am with this particular course. LinkedIn has also made networking possible. YouTube has become the favorite content for millions around the globe. With the rise of the internet, there really isn't much that hasn't been done before.